As discussed in a previous video, motivation ranges from amotivation, meaning no motivation at all the way to intrinsic motivation, where the individual is wanting to act because they truly believe it aligns with their personal interest and their inherent truth and search for what they want to do. DC and Ryan actually did a great job of defining self-determination theory, which proclamated this self-determination continuum that shows from amotivation to intrinsic motivation, variants of extrinsic motivation along the way that are influenced by the amount of self-determination or the amount that the individual chooses on his or her own volition to engage in a certain behavior. The more likely that the requested task aligns with what the individual wants to do themselves, the more likely that he or she is going to want to behave. Think about a job that you get to pick on your own and define on your own. If you started your own business, or if you have a talent that you want to do for fun and you turn that into business, whether it's crafting or basketball or boating, at the end of the day, you're more likely wanting to go to work and happy at work because you're choosing to do that. So the more an organization can create tasks that align with the individual through job design and job crafting, the better performance you're going to get at the end of the day. Our text describes various theoretical frameworks of motivation, from content theories that include Maslow's need theory, ERG theory, Herzberg's hygiene factor model, and McClelland's need theory. Also, they examine process theories of motivation, which include expectancy theory, equity theory, satisfaction and performance theory, goal setting theory, and reinforcement theory, followed by attribution theory that discusses attributions and that we reviewed in previous slides and their relevancy to the workplace and how they can enable managers to create an environment where highly cognitive and physical mechanisms enable and enhance motivation. Before we even discuss different content theories of motivation, I just want to remind you, if you haven't, or show you if you haven't seen it before, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the basis of this is, before you can move on to self-actualization, where you're having a meaningful life full of creativity and you're having happiness and all of those wonderful things, you need to have certain basic needs met. Before I can care about, does my family like me? Do my friends like me? I need to figure out, how am I going to get food and water? And where am I going to sleep at night? This is where a lot of crime can be studied, is by using this. If people's basic needs are not met, this is where safety and security issues become so much of a concern in our society. That aside, as individuals develop and secure their place in the professional workforce, hopefully they're finding a job that creates balance in their life. Again, we'll bring out that work-life balance. You need a profession that enables you to get all the way to self-actualization as well. When those things work together, let's call that happiness or high engagement or motivated. And again, those employees who are getting those needs fulfilled are more likely to perform better. So let's keep it simple then with all of these content or need theory-based motivation motivation frameworks, if you are getting those needs fulfilled, whether they're growth needs, whether they're need for power, whether it's recognition, whether it's pay, having money to feed your family, all of those things need to be fulfilled in order to have an individual who has the capacity for intrinsic motivation. If we do not have our basic needs met, we can't even focus on the things that we are interested in. Hence, how can we get to a self-actualization phase if our basic psychological needs are not being met? That's why extrinsic motivators like pay are just as important as intrinsic motivators like building a task that enables interest and enjoyment of the work itself. So those things work together. So extrinsic motivation is just as important as intrinsic motivation. If we are not paying our employees or creating an environment where they have reduced barriers in their personal lives or opportunities for development for them to fulfill these different needs, we are never going to get to intrinsic motivation, but we also won't even get extrinsic motivated employees, where a motivation is highly predictive of decreased performance, lack of engagement, incivility in the workforce. Why would these individuals care about the goals of the overall organization if they're not getting their basic needs met and taken care of? Now, hopefully you read the text because they go into detail about different content theories of motivation, process theories of motivation, and then attribution theory and motivation. For the purpose of a graduate course, rather than going through each of those things like expectancy theory or need theory, I want to talk about how we can integrate all of these in a framework that really cultivates organizational commitment, that cultivates satisfaction. Why? Because that is what is important along with performance, is we have happy employees that want to stay here and do this again, that we want to attract and retain our talent. So when you look at this integrated model of work motivation presented by Locke and Latham, you'll see here that each of these components or each of these frameworks do play a role in the overall employee motivation, whether it's need-based theories, whether it's expectancy theory, whether there's certain individual traits that play a role as well, and personality differences, whether it's specifically making sure you have your SMART goals. SMART goals is a buzzword. Locke and Latham developed goal setting theory. All of these things, in addition to the job characteristics themselves, can moderate our performance. They can influence whether or not we're going to see successful attainment of goals. And you'll see that attribution theory itself is going to also play a role, because even if they achieve those goals, how people process that is also just as important. And it creates a feedback loop of a system where employees are not project-based consultants. We need to have continuous motivation and continuous high performance as well. So we'll see how lots of things can influence, again, performance, satisfaction, and other important outcomes that we care about for the organization. Also, you can see that they made sure to emphasize that there are policies and procedures, as we discussed last week with our strategic planning and other things, that influence this as well. So I like this model because it provides a holistic approach to really understanding the employee workforce. What I would like you to consider is that this may not be the best snapshot of what's going on. In fact, there might be performance comes after satisfaction, or maybe your values influence what you even care about in terms of your needs. So this is not necessarily a perfect be-all, end-all, but it is one of the first integrated models that I would like you to kind of review and consider as you synthesize your readings for this week.